PhD scholars at IIM Nagpur. On behalf of IIM Nagpur, it is our privilege to welcome you to the Directors Panel discussion on the theme Future of Research and Publication in the Era of AI.
Artificial intelligence is not just changing how research is conducted, it is reshaping how knowledge is created, validated, published, and evaluated. From data-driven discovery and automated analysis to concerns around ethics, originality, and academic rigor, AI is compelling academia to rethink its long-held assumptions.
This panel brings together distinguished academic and industry leaders, each of whom has played a defining role in shaping management education, research ecosystem, and institutional governance in India. To begin, may we request all the panelists to kindly just join us on the dais. Professor Bhimrai Maitri, Director IIM Nagpur, Professor N. Ravichandran, former Director IIM Indore, Professor T.R. Parsuraman, former President and whole-time Director, Toyota Industries, and Dr. Varun Nagaraj, DN SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, Mumbai. Please. Yeah. We also have Professor Manoj Kumar Tiwari, Director IIM Mumbai, who are joining us online.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Kindly allow us to introduce our respected panelists. It is an honor to introduce Professor N. Ravichandran, former Director IIM Indore and retired Professor IIM Ahmedabad. Professor Ravichandran is widely respected for his transformative academic leadership and for pioneering case research and pedagogy in India. As the founder of the Case Research Society of India, his work has deeply influenced practice-oriented research in Indian management education. May we request Professor Bhimrai Maitri to kindly present the bouquet to Professor N. Ravichandran as a token of our appreciation. Welcome, sir.
Next, we have Professor T.R. Parsuraman, former President and whole-time Director, Toyota Industries. With nearly 4 decades of leadership across manufacturing, skill development, academia, and policy, Professor Parsuraman brings a critical industry perspective on Industry 4.0, workforce skilling, and industry-academia collaboration. May we request Professor Bhimrai Maitri to kindly present the bouquet to Professor T.R. Parsuraman. Welcome, sir.
We are also privileged to have Dr. Varun Nagaraj, Dean SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, Mumbai. Dr. Nagaraj brings a rare combination of deep industry experience from Silicon Valley with rigorous academic scholarship. His work in responsible innovation, product management, and digital entrepreneurship provides a balanced perspective on integrating AI into research while retaining ethical and human judgment. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
We are also delighted to introduce Professor Manoj Kumar Tiwari, Director IIM Mumbai, joining us virtually for today's panel discussion. Professor Tiwari is a globally recognized scholar in operations, analytics, and system engineering with an exceptional research record that demonstrates how AI optimization and data-driven with an exceptional research record that demonstrates how data-driven methods can meaningfully influence both academic research and real-world decision-making. Sir, we warmly welcome you and thank you for joining us online. Unfortunately, Dr. Vinita Sahay, I am Bodh Gaya, could not join us today. And finally, we have with us Professor Bhimrai Maitri, Director IIM Nagpur. Okay, welcome, sir. Once again, we extend a warm welcome to all our distinguished panelists. May we now request Professor Bhimrai Maitri, who will be moderating this panel, to kindly take over and deliver opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
So thank you very much. We have 4 distinguished panel members to discuss on the topic of future of research and publications in the era of AI. And online we have my friend Professor Manoj Kumar Tiwari, who is the one, he's heading earlier Nitti Mumbai. Now he's turned it around as a IIM Mumbai under his leadership. Nitti appeared in new avatar as a one of the leading IIM in the country. And we have with us Professor Ravi Chandran, the former director of IIM Indore. And IIM Indore means everybody remembers Professor Ravi Chandran because under his leadership, Indore got a shape and recognition, and also he is the foundation laid for Indore, strong foundation. And whatever Indore is there, the credit goes to Professor Ravi Chandranji. And he is also one of the finest professor of supply chain management, not only in the country but in the world. If you talk about ESEC business school, any business school, everybody talks about Professor Ravi Chandran. I think is a great professor of supply chain management. We have with us Professor Varun Nagaraj, SP Jain. The way SP Jain is transforming and leading today under his dynamic leadership, and the institution has taken many steps ahead in many areas, and under his leadership, plus not only accreditation but research many areas. So we have again one of the finest institution builder with us, Varunji. And the most important, we are all academician now. Along with us, Parshuramanji, T.R. Parshuraman, who is a former president of Toyota Industries and also advisor to Vikram Kirloskar and Toyota Group. He has played a key role, and his expertise lies with Japanese management and also many new initiatives in 4 5 decades. He has played a significant role, and he's also known authority for quality management and Japanese management. And he traveled, of course, many times. Probably I must say that he was half in Japan, half in India. I think that was since I know my Trichy days. And so always, Japan and India and many number of initiatives under his leadership, Kirloskar Toyota has taken. And he is one person, whenever in higher education institution, particularly management institutions, if you want to know what industry wants, what institutions are equipping, everybody remembers T.R. Parshuramanji. Sir was part of the model curriculum in 2018, and he was also part of NAAC when it was a basic accreditation was designed. He was part of the committee of Ministry of Higher Education, and also a maturity model, sir, was consulted. So he's very closely associated with academics, and that is where we have 4 people, 3 institution builder and 1 industry veteran. So such a galaxy of this panel is there. And I am sure the topic given by Professor Nikunj Kumar Jain, a future of research and publications in the era of AI. I think all of you know that AI is affecting everybody, not only every organization, every workplace, but it is affecting everybody. And some people say that you can publish n number of papers in a day using AI. Now, it is a big question. If AI is basically playing a role for publishing, then what really research mean, the question comes. So in this context, to just begin with, because 2 parts, one is the research and publications without research and research without publication. This question also comes nowadays. So therefore, in this topic, I'll just request each panel member to give a opening remarks for 5 minutes. And let us begin with none other than Professor Varun Nagaraj.
Thank you, sir. It's very nice to be here. I've had a chance to work with some of you, some like Akshay more than others. Hello, Akshay. So if you look at research in the age of AI, I think we can step back, given it's an opening remarks, about how AI perhaps is changing how we learn. Because as researchers, part of our job is, to learn new things and to share those new learnings. So I think it's reasonable to just think about how AI is changing the learning process before we look at how it's changing the specifically the research or the publication process. There's a very nice working paper recently I was reading from Harvard that was looking at the short circuiting of learning by AI. And it specifically talked about 3 ways in which AI is compromising learning. And they weren't necessarily focused on researchers, but I think the broad lessons apply to research and to students as well, and to PhD scholars and to MBA students. The first part was essentially about knowledge acquisition. The second part was about skill development, and the third part was about judgment. And this paper looked at, quite quantitatively actually, how this kind of short circuiting was going on. So in the case of knowledge acquisition, we all know pre-AI, you have to put in a fair amount of effort and pain to acquire knowledge. It's only through pain, and I know it sounds terrible, but it's only through pain that you actually internalize certain things. When information is available a little too easily, you find that you're really not learning as much. And I've seen that with myself. I remember from 5 years ago, the depth to which you would go into a literature would probably have you understand that particular literature quite well. Gets really easy now when you're using the elicits and the perplexities of the world to get what you want for that moment where you want it. But it's not clear that it has left a lasting impression on you or that you've actually internalized the key concepts that came to you very fast, almost too fast. So I think AI is compromising the knowledge acquisition and the in-depth knowledge building process. The second part is the application of knowledge through a skill. Skills again take time to practice. You don't learn a guitar just by strumming it a few times. That requires pain again. And here again, when you use tools, the pain, perhaps some of us, all of us went through perhaps with an SPSS and an AMOS and so forth, when all that gets simplified to a point where a nice UI allows you to do a whole bunch of things and you really don't know what happened. The question is, have you really acquired the skills that you need? Having a co-pilot is great, but I think the driver needs to be better than the co-pilot. And I think that's getting short-circuited. And the third thing that's getting short-circuited is judgment. Now, in the case of students and managers, it is the ability to judge in a given context depends on what that context is, which AI doesn't help you with. In fact, it goes to the most obvious biased solution that there is. It's in the nuances that real judgment resides, and that's true in research as well. The ability to theorize comes from judgment on what you're seeing, not necessarily what it is that AI has pulled together for you. So I think we have a larger threat that we have to deal with, that AI is compromising, I think, the learning process. It's also helping the learning process. So I'll take a more positive spin on my next round, but I'll begin by sort of outlining my grave concern that unless we know how to get the best of the positive and minimize the negative, this could be actually a fairly net negative turn.
Thank you very much, Varunji. So laying a strong foundation. Now, may I request Professor Manoj Kumar Tiwari, Director, IIM Mumbai. And you all know that Manoj is a prolific researcher. And when it comes to operation research in India, so first name comes Professor Manoj Kumar Tiwari, and IIT Kharagpur, even IIM Mumbai, he played a significant role. And probably in Mumbai, people say, in the evening or night, day starts. And that is not only true for Mumbai, but that is also true for Professor Manoj Kumar Tiwari. His day starts in the night. And after a couple of nights, he will come out with the paper. And he is one of the great finest trainer for the young researcher. So keeping this in mind, Manojji, so your opening remarks are very important for us. 5 minutes opening remarks, sir.
So first of all, sir, let me express my utmost respect to you for giving me this opportunity to say something in the prestigious conference SOM2025. And I know very well, sir, you are so kind that you permitted me to be online because of some of my health issues. And I am really thankful to you. And also, I pay my respect to Dr. Nikun Kumar Janji, who has given this invitation to me through his signature. And then on the panelist side, my most respected Yan Ravi Chandranji, and he is so guiding and touchlight for me for social issues. And all of us, we know the Dr. T.R. Parasuramanji, a very respected authority in the domain of quality and management. and Varun Nagaraj ji, leading, academician and administrator for the private business school SP Jain, which has a very formidable reputation in the country. डॉक्टर मेहती साहब क्या बताएं आपको आप तो you are connected with our board also, and so much you have done for me that I have no words to express my gratitude to you. Coming to the topic, sir, देखिए जब भी कोई नई चीज आती है ना सर, सब आदमी उसके पीछे सोचता है क्या होगा इससे। लेकिन एक हिंदी में बहुत पहले कहावत कही जाती थी कि जैसे रहे अवस्था वैसे सहे शरीर जो है। मीन्स जिस तरह से सिचुएशन बने उस तरह से अपने को अडॉप्ट करने में ही भलाई है। So basically, if you see the power of AI, how good it is for human beings, say the way in which the entire 4, 5 segments of the research that we do, what are they are? They are that what are the things that we do for the scholars and authors? What are the things AI do for the reviewers? What are the AI do for the area editors? What are he does for the editor in chief? So at each stage of the publication process, because most of the students are here and some younger faculty members are there, so I just want to highlight them that most of the journals, they have given you full permission to use AI. And I just have in front of me the guidelines for the how MSOM, that is Informed Publication Generative AI guidelines for authors, reviewers, and editors. I have the Springer also guidelines, and very good software that has been proposed by the Elsevier, the generative AI policies for the journals. So, sir, it means there is no problem in massively adopting the AI, but there are certain very important points has been mentioned with respect to the use of AI. As you know very well that AI gives a speed, AI gives you very good code, AI gives you very strong validation, statistical validation, AI gives you very good short time to develop an image, gives you short time to develop a table, figure, etc. These are all one of the finest and beauteous part of the AI. But what is problem with AI? So here I cite an equation which has been recently published, and I saw that equation, तो मैं सोचा कि चल के आप लोग सामने रखूंगा। तो इक्वेशन है the future of publication will be defined by one new equation called human accountability plus AI acceleration. आपने कहा ना मैती साहब कि एक दिन में पेपर छाप सकते हैं, सो AI acceleration plus strict transparency, and that is equal to trusted science actually. So any science that we publish, basically it's part of trusted science where we take full responsibility. Means as an author, it is responsibility of author to defend each and every word, each and every figure, each and every line that he has given in his research paper or report or anything else. So keeping that in mind, the very strong thing that they have to do while using the AI is mandatory disclosure statement. Means they have to write that I am fully giving you details, that tool, version, purpose, specifications, verifications, statistical validations, formulations, etc. They all are full of my knowledge and checking. And many times, you get a lot of references from the AI. Please don't copy that one unless you are not sure. So it is better that please verify it. Then explicit limits and safeguards, that is restricting AI in certain context, image generation, peer reviews, etc. Stronger provenance and verification, that is expecting detailed logs of data, origin, code, prompts, and results, and then implementing checklists for citations, numeric consistencies, figure manipulation, etc. And finally, advanced integrity tooling, means deploy AI tools for screen paper, mail patterns, and also use the guardrails, which is very part of agentic AI. That is where the digital bumpers enforce rules and boundaries to keep many of the agentic AI and autonomous AI agents from going off track, ensuring that they act ethically, legally within the defined operational limits to prevent harmful bias. So these are some of the things in which I say that Like in mobile phone, the mobile comes, we have forgotten that is there in number. अब तो डिफिकल्टी ये है कि घर वालों का नंबर याद करना भारी पड़ रहा है सर. So because of AI also, so many things are coming up which we may have to use with very caution, with very, verification particularly, and some sort of critical thinking ability in mind to pursue this AI-driven research for publication and also for reports. And these are some of the initial comments that I want to place before the respected panel as well as the audience who are attending this SOM25 conference. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Manoj. Thank you very much. Now we have with us Professor Ravichandran ji, who brought a research culture in IIM Indore. I think when he joined IIM Indore, so it was the best teaching institution, but sir's leadership, IIM Indore really laid the foundation of research. And his, framework of research in Indore, it has taken Indore what it is there today. It is because of him. And how to, right from conference to the research publications, and created that research culture and innovation culture in the institutions. So let us hear from Professor Ravichandran, his opening remark, a future of research and publication in the era of AI.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Maitri Saab. And I think if I remember a couple of years before, we met accidentally in America in the Decision Sciences Institute conference. Some accidents turn out to be a fortune for me, and this one is one of them. So I'm very grateful for your support. And in the last 4 years, probably I had asked you 20 times different kinds of help, and you never said no. So I think it's nice to know you, and I'm grateful that you sort of thought it worthwhile to include me in this panel. I have heard my dear friend Manoj Kumar's views on the future research in the context of AI. Again, Manoj is a very amazing, dynamic person, and he lives by example. Not only he preaches, but he also practices. And the amount of work that he does is absolutely phenomenal as an institution builder as well, also as a researcher. And Nagaraj is, of course, a young, growing person, and he's doing wonderfully well, and we wish him all the best, and happy to be a part of this panel, which is started by people like Parasuram, who is a chair professor on his own in SRM system. I have a slightly different take on the role of research and publication in the era of AI. One may or may not agree, but I thought this is a forum where we can place ideas freely, because still India is a democratic country. And so one may or may not agree, but I think I would sort of divide this whole topic into two parts. One is research, the other one is publication. All that is researched well is not necessarily publishable, and all that is publishable is not well researched. This is something which we all know. It depends on who you are. It depends on whom do you know. It depends on where do you want to place it, etc., etc. Some classic works have been rejected by 15 times, 20 times by people, and then they got Nobel Prize subsequently. So I think the referees have their own ego, and which I think is very justifiable because they are referees, and that may have a negative impact on a potential research outcome. So I would distinguish these two things as we go by. We'll worry about publication a little later. But when you come to research, I think I see this as a continuous spectrum. The first spectrum is you used, for example, you sort of address a real situation which is in front of you, either as a manager or as an engineer. And you found that what you have been able to say is sensible and is workable and it is making impact. So you abstract it and put it in a context and then write this as a research publication and then seek for mechanisms by which this can be published. This, I think, is one way of doing this so-called research. The other one is you have an urging problem like a four-color problem. This has been there for ages and you want to make a contribution and you sort of grappled with it over a period of time, or it's a traveling salesman problem, or it's the NLP complete problems, etc. For example, the most researched topic in operations research and operations management is linear programming. but still we do not know if I give a solution, can you tell me whether this is an optimal solution or not? There is no very quick way of telling this, and this is a kind of an open-ended problem in its own way. So people look at these kind of problems and try and resolve that. Now, there is a whole lot of people who are in between, who are basically, I would like to use the word convex combination, but I think linear combination is better because they just combine, sort of mix and marry an idea and take another idea, put it on this, superimpose this, and under these conditions, sometimes this can be called, in a very ephemeric way, it can also be called a delta epsilon research. Like, you take something and try and modify that a little bit and try and add on something and look for a journal which can publish it. Or you do an extensive literature survey, you identify a gap which is artificial or real, and then try and fit that through a publication. And that's another way of doing it. So this is in between. So the spectrum, one spectrum is you do something very substantial and try and abstract it and put it in the context and make it much more widely available. The other one is try and solve an intrinsic problem which has been in existence for a long time, and you bring a scientific flavor to this, and therefore you seek for a avenue by which your results can be announced. In between, there is a whole range. Now, I don't see AI playing the role in the first as well as in the last. The AI can play a role in between, the linear combination research that we are talking about. Now, what AI can certainly do is, I myself has experienced this, even though age is not on my side. It sort of gives you a very quick, this I think what Nagaraj mentioned in its own way. Learning is compromised, experience is compromised, skills are compromised, and what is not compromised in AI? And if AI does not compromise, it won't be AI. It would be something else. So I think AI and compromisation go together. They are two sides of the same coin. Now, for example, if you summarize a book, it does it in a few minutes. You ask that one of those chat GP assistants, etc., do you know that this book? Yes, I know. How can I help you? Can you make a summary? It gives a summary. Can you be ruthless in the summary? It gives another summary. Can you criticize the summary? It gives you another summary. Now, you get all this, but you don't get the flavor of the book. It is like becoming a mother by looking at some virtual reality. Now, there is nothing like reading the book and soaking yourself in the book. When you read and soak yourself in the book, that's why, in the early days, we used to solve differential equations by hand. We never solved differential equations by using a software. Because when you use a software to solve a differential equation, you don't understand the pain associated with it. That I think is, Nagaraj mentioned in his own way, skills do not come overnight. If you want to do a time series analysis, you can't just either do it by looking at the input and output of a computer package. You need to sort of soak your hands, soil yourself, make some mistakes, get scolded by some people who knows better than you, and then you learn. I think all this is completely absent when you go through this AI route. Certainly, yes. For example, if I had to make a decision whether I want to read this book or not, that one-page summary is good enough for me to see whether I want to read this book or not. But if I want to understand the book, if I want to understand the context in which the author is saying something, I think I need to go a little bit more deeper. So AI can replace a research assistant very quickly, a dumb one, not a bright one, and it can do the literature survey for you. It can chronologically put the articles in a particular way for you. But the amount of thinking that you need to do, the amount of originality that you need to bring in, the amount of contextual clarity you need to bring in, I think AI can be of very limited help. People who are very technology driven will come back and say, this is coming 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, it will start thinking like you. That's what people will come back and say. And those who have used Google Maps will know how painful it is sometimes. Therefore, I think the same thing is true here. I don't see a major impact of the change in the research on the first two extremes that I mentioned through the context of AI. That would be my initial take, and we'll come back to it. That's fine.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. And now I request Sri Parashuramanji, who is from industry, and his perspective, how research and publication will take us safe in the era of AI.
Thank you, Dr. Maitriji. It's always a pleasure coming to this institute. I think I always get inspired. The wonderful campus, first of all, congratulations. Sir, according to me, I think AI, I always see it as A and I. I is always there. Without that, AI has no meaning. So I think that I portion is whatever you call the absolute consciousness or your mind or whatever your intellect. I think that is why that I think I is very, very important. See, I just look at from 2 points of view. One is industry point of view and academia point of view. Of course, when I look at research and publication I think has got the maximum benefit out of AI. Be it the manuscript or be it coding or citation reference. I think everything is possible in publication. I think we have got a huge opportunity. Of course, research, when it comes to that, I think a lot of my earlier veterans, they talked about integrity, academic honesty, and ethical integrity, which are two important things. And I think this comes by value. I think that's a completely a big subject by itself. But when I look at the biggest advantage of AI in research is elimination of monotonous activities, both in industry and academia. I think that's the biggest, greatest takeaway. So there are two things. One is how do we eliminate the monotony so the scale and speed can go up dramatically and drastically. I think that is where we have to smartly use AI. And when it comes to real thinking, real selection of problem, prioritization, and the kind of human touch, I think that is where the researchers play a very, very important role. So when I look at the industry per se, see today the industry is one of the greatest beneficiary of AI. I think it's mind-boggling. Let me tell you, I've been visiting lots of factories from time to time, and in the recent times when I visit some of the factories, I think the exponential changes have been mind-boggling because of AI. I think be it the predictive maintenance or the kind of mission monitoring in terms of vibration, noise, and feeding back to that earlier operation, correction loops, feedback, closely controlled correction loops. In fact, the Kaizen Bank, for example, some of the Kaizens happening in one part of the world, it is getting transplanted in no time to other part of the world in large organizations. I think the kind of a thinking way, I think it's something mind-boggling. I think research in industry, for example, today we have thousands and thousands of industry problems. Even if you take the Indian platform, the Manthan platform is there, which is very prominent, where the national issues, the social issues, and the academic issues, everything is available. But how do institutions reach those problems? For example, the reach to these kind of problems, I think AI can play a very, very significant role in synthesizing the research patterns, in simulating those kind of research. And today the hypothesis setting, how to simulate that hypothesis in no time, I think AI can play a very, very important role. But the choosing the problems, for example, industry or society, I think largely it has to come from us because AI cannot choose. But I was telling the director, one of the research conference I attended in Kyoto on a world conference on society and technology, where we had a topic of discussion. We had a lot of Nobel laureates also. And the topic of discussion that we are doing was, can we substitute the human brain? I think we had almost 2.5 hours. A lot of people from Berkeley, Stanford, the best of the schools. But finally, the conclusion was, we cannot. Even we cannot go point, not 1% substitution also is not possible. That is the power of human brain, because the pure consciousness which AI cannot duplicate. Therefore, I think it's very, very important to bring that I factor and use AI as a very powerful assistant. So I think in the industry, it is really doing magic now because the kind of deliveries it has given in the last 2-3 years, I think it's something mind-boggling. So whereas the research in academia, the challenges are always there. See, one challenge is, for example, who is good, who is bad? Because AI brings everybody to a level playing field. I think the skill of researchers, many skill of researchers are hidden because of AI. Therefore, this is, see, ultimately, the pure creativity comes from the quality of the researcher. That is missing in the papers because AI brings everybody to a level playing platform. And then finally, the plagiarism, which can really say something is copied, but where is the originality coming from? In true sense, that is missing. That is one of the challenge. But one more positive I see, for example, today we have many, many problems in the country. Epidemics, penury, poverty, illiteracy. I think how these problems can be globalized. I think AI can play a very important role. These problems can be taken to global platform. Similarly, global challenges can come to Indian schools, Indian institutions through AI. Because many of these tier 2, tier 3 colleges, institutions, they may not have reached, but AI can do that magic. So I think today IITs, IIScs, and regional engineering colleges have got a better opportunity. But I think for a country like India, we have 42, 45,000 engineering total colleges and 1,200 universities. Therefore, with this kind of heterogeneity and diversity, I think AI can really bring a lot of magic by bringing global technologies, global connect. So that is my take, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Parshuramanji. I think you all listened opening remark of all the four distinguished panel members. Now the next question is, you see, I think if you all know that a lot of AI buzz happening for many years, at least 4 or 5 years. A day will not go without talking AI. So somebody was talking about, is there any end of PhD thesis? Research. So today we submit the thesis and review it and get the degree, PhD degree. So in place of thesis, PhD thesis, a PhD now maybe may take another form. I'm just random thought to discuss, deliberate, agree and disagree for all the panel members. PhD, instead of submitting a thesis, you have to come out with the product or solutions. Solutions may be a software solution or product, and not only thesis. Today only we submit the thesis, review it, and we get the degree. So can you see that change as a part of AI? We have to come out with the product, because research has to be a responsible research, and responsible research has to be useful to the society, maybe useful to community, business, policy making, and government. If that is not doing that, then that research has no meaning. Even though fundamental research for AI 1956 it was coined, but it took 30-40 years to come to the public now like this today say. But all the research, whether it is a fundamental research or applied research, it has to be a responsible research. And responsible research has to be touch these 5 stakeholders, either business, society, community, policy making, and government. If that kind of research we are expecting, probably today you all know that the Australian ABDC categorization or ABS or even America some category. But if you see higher the classification of journals, A star, A plus, less they are applicable to the field. Assumption, and that is A star publication, even management of science. Fundamental assumption, 2008 I was attending AOM conference in Anaheim. A fundamental cost of quality 4 category fundamental was taken wrong, and that was published there, and the fellow was presenting. And it is published, and that is a great journal. So many great journals have very poor quality articles, and many not so great journals have great articles. That combination also you find. So keeping this in mind, now the next question, Professor Nagaraj, highly academician and IITian, and I am sure working many years in US. I think Nagaraj, I think the question is whether end of only thesis can PhD means there should be a either product, maybe in the form of software or any product, it should come out as a part of research along with the thesis.
Thanks, Dr. Maitre. So, I'll try and separate it out between what a PhD output should be and what ongoing research should be, because honestly, we should think about what we do at the age of 40, 50, 60 as being no different than what we are doing as FPM and PhD scholars, right? I mean, it's not like the PhD marks the end of the research journey. It's the start of a research journey. So you made 2 or 3 points, one of which I agree with, one I have some questions about, right? The part I agree with is the fact that I think research should have relevance. And even though the Academy of Management and various other bodies have kept using that word relevance, there is very little evidence that the research being produced is necessarily always relevant. And a good example is the section called Implications for Practice or Policy Makers. It's a joke section in any FT50 or in any particular journal. As a person who's a practitioner for 30 years and who's tried very hard after a PhD to try and bridge that gap, if anything, I'm probably a good ambassador for academia back into the world of industry. But when I put my industry hat on, it's pretty apparent that 90% of all management research is pretty worthless. And because you can't articulate what its actual are and what its relevance for practice is. So I think raising the bar on that, as you're saying, whatever the artifact might be, but raising the bar on that, I think is a good way to try distinguish one type of journal from another. And maybe there's a new type of journal that needs to be created that is really focused on the most relevant kind of research. Why isn't there a FT50 for the most relevant research, or the best 100, the best 1,000 papers that came out that had the most potential impact on policy and research? A friend of mine at Silicon Valley, when I started a PhD, he said, "Why?" Right? He said, "I'd understand it if you took 4 years off from work," because I was 50 years when I left, obviously a high-paying CEO role and such. And he said, "I'd understand it if you took 4 years off to train for the Ironman triathlon, because California is very fitness focused." But he said, 4 years off to do a PhD, why would you do that, right? So that is essentially what industry thinks about management PhDs, right? That whether you exist or not, all the great companies in the world would exist. Every product would have been invented and so forth. So we've got to be humble about what we do. And as a profession, we just pay lip service. It's time to really start challenging relevance and having maybe a separate category for that. But the part where I disagree with you, Dr. Maitri, is about creating a product. The best creators aren't necessarily those who are most educated. So, sometimes it's better to leave product creation to those with 10th standard and 12th standard and college dropout education, as opposed to trying to conflate it with PhDs. I think product creation and innovation is a whole separate thing altogether. But relevance, however you prove it, I think, and maybe it's through a product, but it could also be through a policy paper and position. I certainly agree with you on that.
Thank you very much, Professor Nagaraj. He brought out a very, very relevant, how relevance is important. Not only product and software will give the solution. Now, Professor Manoj, I think Manoj, as I told you, prolific researcher. Many times you all submit a paper for the journal and you get the reply, the first reply, first line maybe, it is very important and relevant. But the second line says what is important is not relevant, and what is not relevant is not important. Hence, it is rejected. So first line probably will be very happy. Second line reading means it is rejected. So I think Manojji, the relevance part as Nagarajji brought, and the product and solution, same question. Whether shall we, product and solution means basically it is, you are directly showcasing evidence that this is what my research. Otherwise, lot of research, and we have, we are number 2 or number 3 in the world for research publications. But what is the impact of research on the society and all other, government and all, that is a missing element. So to bring the impact, whether it is a good idea to have product and solution, or what Nagaraj said, both are relevant. We should look differently, product and creativity. I think, sir, your views.
Sir, actually, I humbly wish to mention 3-4 important points on the topic that you have raised. First point that you raised about thesis and requirement in the current era. So what I want to say that, sir, research path is a well-defined, like route, where idea is that some problem is to be coined, problem may be theoretical, maybe practical, maybe empirical, maybe we can say comparative ones, or maybe something challenging, innovative. There are many hundreds of categories of the problems are there. Any problem, even I can tell you one of the wonderful products are born out of the research like publications. Remember now how this chat GPT and generative AI comes up. Please refer 2017 paper of Badwani. Is all born of that acquisition. And most of the management science paper, I tell you, I was opinion of in 2007 that it तो बहुत पक्का पूरा डेल्टा गामा डबल समेशन इंटीग्रेशन भरा हुआ है क्या इसको इंडस्ट्री कैसे समझेगी. But that was my poor understanding, sir. When I go deeper into the problems and paper, I found that they are the direction givers. Because many persons, we are busy, sir, in dealing thousands of the things. Even 10-page reading is very difficult for all of us, actually, sir. And we start commenting on that, one of the very powerful, widely respected journals where we don't have time to read even 10-page daily, sir. So idea is that, sir, ki these journals, they are having a very high level respectability for producing some knowledge, producing some ideas, validations, etc. Many things are coming up into that. And that gives analytically sound ability among the people to distinguish what is good and what is bad and how new ideas can come up. Sir, I was quoting from my industry friend and students. He says that most of the consulting firms, right from the public policy to the operational level, software development, etc., 90% of them got brilliant ideas from the research papers only, sir. Correct. But problem is this, there is no price for citing those things, sir. Nobody is claiming that I got this idea from management science or operational research or MSOM or for AFT 50 or some other journals. They use that idea in solving the problems. Industry, for example, I solve at least many industry problems, which has outcome of more than thousands of crore rupees. But I know very well, I have never written anywhere is that मेरे को idea आया कहाँ solution वाला जो है, क्योंकि उसे जो जरूरत नहीं पड़ती, उनको solution चाहिए सर industry को. I have given that solution. So idea is that, sir, a well-established process, that is problem definition, its application. Say, I can tell you many of the PhD theses, so they are having direct applications to the industry process improvement, new product development, many software development. But how they have been written, that only can understood by those who are having deeper work in that area, sir. Correct. And of course, sir, many times, we do PhD or we supervise PhD or we do research for bringing the critical knowledge among the students. So known problems are given. Say, for example, sir ne VRP bataya. I tell you, sir, VRP is a very challenging problem called as some sort of, NP hard, which has many answers. Say VIP with this time window, VR sliding window, VRP with stochastic, VRP with one point difference. Many hundred varieties of problems are there. अब जिसको नहीं पता है सर 100 वैरायटी ऑफ प्रॉब्लम, क्या बोलेगा, अरे ये तो सालों साल से चला रहा है, वही वही लेमा गामा, वही थ्योरम, वही थिंग्स, दे आर नॉट प्रूविंग, दे आर सेइंग सेम थिंग. Its main reason is that we do not understand that how mathematically complex thing has been simplified by algorithmic purposes, actually, sir. So my humble opinion is that let any research, whether you do product or software or build up, but they should be properly represented and if in a manner which has been very much part of this. Say, for example, Ramcharitmanas, Veda, anything you can see, एकदम कंटेक्सचुअल है सर. देखिए सब चीज बढ़िया बना के रखा, जैसे पीएचडी होती है वैसे वो भी किया गया है. So it's a very established scientific process, sir. And I don't think there is any change required into that. Only thing is that change in mentality is required, that how any practical thing, theoretical thing, societally beneficial thing, they all can be nicely represented and packed into a thesis or paper or something. And I tell you, sir, I don't want to solve any problem, publish any paper unless it has no relevance in some industry. But of course, whether industry is ready for that or not. If industry is just copying the idea from Japan, sir, or taking the technology from West, and they do not want to even make a change. One screw also they want to purchase from that country, then क्या करेंगे आप innovation वहाँ पे बताइए? Correct. So there are many constraints from both sides, industry side, research side, everywhere. So we have to manage, sir, and that is also part of research, how to manage good research. Correct, sir. By taking into account industry interest also, interest of the academics also, into society also. So that's why it is going on, sir. So I support there should be thesis, there should be proper way of it, there should be strong mathematical background, very good lemma theorem is required. Only thing is we should develop our understanding that how actually they have been put there to bring, whether to increase somebody's ability or increase the applicability or giving new direction to the society. Correct. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Manojji, for your review. I think all of you know today, I think entire world is changing. Faster than fast world is changing. Change is the only thing constant we keep on saying. It is a fluid world. And today, you know that in a residential, I'm a civil engineer. If you see the residential today, whatever the earlier residential building used to have a kitchen as one of the room, now kitchen is missing in a future residential complexes. Because earlier, the market was for the families and today family is dependent on the market. Family is for the market. So it has changed. So because now everybody goes out and eat a food and there is no need for kitchen and everybody working. So now entire family structure has changed and kitchen room is missing in the residential. So this is the way change is happening. Why can't there should not be any change in the research? Research is the one, any research right from OBHR area, they also have to do statistical analysis, so many chi-square, this square, all those things. Why there is no change in the methodology of research and outcome of research and impact of research? So this is a big question because change is happening everywhere. But if you see most of the thesis OBHR, they are very poor in all the mathematical, but still they get it done from somebody and they'll submit the thesis. So why can't we should question why research means is it necessary for statistical analysis? And sir has a strong background of analytics. Professor Ravichandranji, nobody can match when it comes to supply chain analytics. I think, sir, my questions to you, and with taking forward earlier question, end up the only thesis to product and services plus this, sir. I request you to.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think there are a number of questions you raised, but I thought I was turning my mind on the first question, but you added a new one. So I didn't have time to think about it, but I will still try and manage. The first and foremost point is, is there a concept of PhD relevant anymore? Is what you started with at some stage. I personally think the concept of PhD is relevant if you really understand what the PhD is for. PhD is not to me a degree. PhD is not what you get for writing a thesis and going through an evaluation committee, whether internal or external. PhD is a process by which you learn to ask the right questions and continue to learn as we go along. This, I think, when you get a PhD from a good institution, what you are certified is you are not certified for the output. You are certified for the process that you have imbibed in trying to ask questions which are relevant, questions which are difficult, questions which are useful, and questions which can be answered or otherwise. That process is probably very important. Unfortunately, in many things, as you rightly said, change is the only constant. You said the kitchens are vanishing. So is the family affection, which is also vanishing. Because what you are getting is now everything is paid by credit card. You don't even touch the money. And what you eat is different from what is eaten in a family environment. So I think many things have changed. Likewise, the PhD process has also changed. Now there is undue importance on the degree rather than the process. And that's why many institutions are suffering and many institutions are flourishing. Those institutions, for example, why do we think that generally a PhD from an Ivy League university is probably good? Because the emphasis is on the process. Emphasis is not necessarily on the product, which is a degree. Whereas in some institutions, probably the emphasis is on the degree and not necessarily on the process. So long as the process emphasis of PhD is upheld, I think the PhD will be relevant. And that I think is my take on the first question that you asked. The second issue is when you go to a journal, the journal fellows, audit editors nowadays write letters through AI, so they don't even spend time. And the letter is so beautifully drafted because the AI can ask you, can I make it a little bit more polite? Can I make it a little bit more polished? Can I make it a little bit more impactful? Can I make the fellow to feel, unka gala kaat rahe hain, but can he feel great about it? So I think that AI is asking all that, and you will try and develop those letters. Therefore you get nice letters which are delivering lousy message. Often the editors do not even have the time to run through it. They flip through the pages and then they make a decision, which is fine. But the larger, because we are going to them, they are not coming to us. Now, let me sort of put this in a slightly different perspective. What is relevant for you as a researcher may not be relevant for the journal. Because the journal is interested in advancing a certain set of ideas, certain set of papers, and certain set of knowledge. And that may or may not be relevant to you as a researcher. And this gap becomes much larger if you are doing something which is very practical. Because practice does not wait for the paper to be published. Practice wants the problem to be resolved. Now, therefore, you move ahead and resolve the problem. For example, Parasuraman is here, he is the best person to talk about it. Where did the Toyota production system come from? It doesn't come from the academic curriculum. It doesn't come from the academia. It came from the industry because they have to solve a problem. They need to find a way by which the productivity can go up, and therefore the entire ecosystem was developed around that. Now, similarly, for example, I did a piece of work for the World WHO at some point in time where I was to design a supply chain for the tuberculosis disease. And I went around and started talking to people who matter in the field and the people. An IAS officer sitting in Chennai has developed a system which is a pull-based system for the medical requirements of his government hospitals. And all that I need to do is just make a little bit of polishing of it, acknowledge that, and say that this is what will work. So his work is not published. I mean, he has not published this work, but he has done something remarkable for revolutionizing the drug supply system in Tamil Nadu, Tamil Nadu healthcare system. We sort of modified that model and put it in WHO, and it sort of took its own course of action as we went along. Similarly, for example, many such examples can be given. So in other words, the more practical a problem you solve, the less the work is publishable. The more impractical a problem you solve, the higher the chances it will be publishable. Now, because of that, you have a 20-page article on management science. To read that, it takes probably 15 days for an academician. For an industrialist, forget it. Therefore, the question of using these ideas in the industry does not even arise. I'm reminded of I joined IIM Ahmedabad in 1980. I had a faculty colleague who is an MIT PhD called Nitin Patel. He still now works with the MIT, and he has gone back to the US after spending a lot of time in India. He did a piece of work for how do you locate the primary healthcare centers in various districts in India. And he developed an integer programming model, and he came up with a solution, etc. And he made a recommendation to the client who was asked him to solve this problem. He abstracted that and published this in management science. This was way back in 1978, 1980. Today, you do the best of the practical problem, take it to management science. Yeah, I can guarantee you it will be desk rejected. Because they have an anathema, if it is applicable, we are not in it. We are interested in database, evidence-based research. What is database, evidence-based research when you don't have a problem? Can you look at database, evidence-based research on a dead body? You can only look at clinical data only on a living body. So I think I'm not blaming them. Their priorities are very different. As a researcher, our priorities are completely different. Therefore, it's a big dilemma. Today, if I join as a young assistant professor in Maitri's Institute, I will not get promoted as a professor because I don't have a grade publication. I will rot and die as an assistant professor. This is what will happen to me. And fortunately, I'm out of this, in some sense, I think this is the reality. We are not addressing this reality. For example, somebody mentioned here, I think Nagaraj mentioned that we must have a separate journal which focuses on some of these practical ideas. I guarantee you, 3 years down the line, that journal becomes so obscure that nobody will be able to read it. This is what has happened to IIM Ahmedabad Journal. Vikalpa is supposed to be a dialogue between managers and the academicians. It is like it's a cousin, I wouldn't say poor, it's a cousin of HBR. But in reality now, Vikalpa is looking for articles which are data-based, large data sets, regression-based, research methodology-based, etc., etc. I think we have this myopic view that everything should be esoteric. Everything should be very scholarly, and scholarly is not necessarily useful. I think that I think is, and what is useful is not necessarily scholarly. So I think that's one way of looking at it. The last point that with Maitri Saab asked is essentially, should the research methodology change? Answer is of course it has to change. It has to change because you have to add new tools and techniques as you go along. But the example that you gave, to my mind, indicates the lack of willingness on the part of the researchers to learn new techniques and tools and use it in an appropriate way. Now, because everybody wants an easy way. For example, the way in which it works in India at least is you get hold of a researcher who is an expert on something. And he knows how to make some delta, all kinds of permutation and combinations of that idea. Then you get a PhD from him, and that goes on. Therefore, there is no question of developing a new methodology or new tool or anything like that. Whereas the same person from America has done service quality, which is a completely different concept. So I think my sense is research tools will dynamically get added. What is relevant and not is publishable may not be correlated. And if PhD is a process of acquiring knowledge or creating knowledge, that will remain valid forever to come, no matter whether we are dealing with an AI area or not. Last point which I wanted to make, Prahlad was known for this great idea called core competency. Prahlad is a management guru which India gave to the whole world, like Vishwamitra. Now, Imagine how can you come up with a concept like core competency by looking at patterns from AI? There is no way. We can continue to say that AI will help me to do this, but AI is not going to come and tell you the modified version or the mature version of resource-based view of an organization is core competency. It's not going to come back and say that. Therefore, I think we need to understand each tool has got its own merits. Each tool has got its own limitations, and there is no limitation to the human mind. There is no limitations to the creativity of the human mind, and researchers are essentially creative mavericks. And others can help them, but they can't replace them.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I think with lot of clarity, you have come out with your own perspective and views. So next, you see, we all academician, any education institution or higher education institution, we always look at three things: knowledge creation, knowledge dissemination, and knowledge application. So when it comes to knowledge creation, largely, we talk about research or publication. But it has been, people say, many of the administrators set up the institution, they always say those who are the great researcher, they are the poor teacher. And those who are the great teachers, they are the poor researcher. I think that has been a saying, exceptions are not examples, but basically how to bring the strong bond between theory and practice. Theory is largely attributed, or it is because of research, and practice is, we are stalwart sitting over here, Parshuramanji. So how to bring the strong bond between these two so that students can get a benefit of a framework, concept, model, and its application in the corporate world. Sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Now, jovially, from what Dr. Ravichandran said, those days PhD was very difficult. They say passed with high difficulty is PhD. Today, with after AI, I think PhD is how you orchestrate. Sir, you asked the right question. See, today one of the biggest challenges industry is facing. Industry has got thousands of problems unsolved, but there is no takers. In the sense that reach is not happening. I look at it in a different perspective. Today, when we say, in Toyota, we say, identifying the problem is the biggest problem. See, it is like five blind men talking about a dark elephant in a black night, which is not there. We are only hallucinating. That is why the Toyota's A3 paper, even $1 billion investment is put on A3 paper. I think how to go to the identification of the problem. I think it's very easy to make a 1,000-page report. Same thing if you have to put it in 100 pages, all the more difficult. If you have to bring it in A3 paper, that is where the churning of brain happens. I think that is where you get into the root of the problem. So having said that, I feel in India, I think our ecosystems are also equally responsible. For example, if I look at, let us say, Japan. Japan has got open innovation system for research, where the corporations or the big companies set up research institutes in the universities, and it is driven by the industry. Here we have center of excellence, but it is driven by the university or institute, where it is driven by the industry, and government also pitches in. So that is where the industry academia collaboration is happening. Even if you take MIT model, the MIT industry license program, Google is one of the output of this program, where companies become member of MIT license program, and MIT has got the best of the scientists, engineers working on advanced problems, so be it battery management or advanced chemistry, and industries can approach and they can get a huge reward for that, and new products get developed there. Same thing with the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany. I think where the industry, academia, and young startups, they work on problems of concern. Same thing you talked about A-Star Singapore. I think the government gives a huge funding, and it is problem driven, and the best of the experts give solution. And industry and academia partner hand in hand. And another important thing is that a very wonderful TTO office, technology transfer office, which is very much lacking in our country. So many patents are not getting recognized or stolen also. And many publications are not going to the next level. So I think, sir, in fact, you also said about the product development. I think you hit a very important point. Ultimately, research without impact is like a flower without fragrance, right? So I think it's very important that I look from industry point of view. Any research should be applied research problems chosen from thousands and thousands of problems, and the output should be measurable, quantifiable, and should be certified by these kind of bodies where the research has got an everlasting impact. AI is definitely a catalyst to accelerate the research, but I think the impact portion, which is very, very significant, I think that impact portion should be given the highest significance given the future point of time, sir. With this, I stop here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I think my dear delegates and participants, you have listened all the four uh, distinguished panel members, their perspective. I just raised the questions and you have listened to their views. And you all know that last 7-8 years or 10-15 years, many private colleges PhD program was one of the leading program. Other program, they may not be getting students, but PhD program, backdated registration, thesis outsourcing, these are all happening, and there were regulations came, and now they have to have upper ID and the identification, backdated registration, all those things. University Grant Commission has now taken care of it, and the number of student registration, all those things you'll go to the respective regulatories. And as a part of that, in between, PhD was most demanding and highly charged program. Many private universities, and they were not known for any other than PhD. And many people used to charge the huge money, and that has been stopped. And also, it has spoiled the name of the research in many, because any time any disruption happened, privatization in education in India was happening, and many things related to research, I think, happened, which was not good for the higher education point of view, but those things were happening. And correction, anything new, always there are corrections and recorrections. Now government has made a correction, and Private University Act and even State Central University Act, the respective changes have come, and mandatory disclosure, all those things have come. And of course, and many of you are from premier institutions of India, Institute of National Importance. So now it is important, this research, AI, how it is impacting, and impact of research, whether it is a theoretical research, practical research, applied or fundamental. So what is the impact of research, and why, people always say India is the only country, it is the biggest consumer of the technology. Now, to become a producer of technology, I think our institution should also play important role. Of course, Nagaraji said that creativity and entrepreneurship, startup, it is a different kind of field. It may not be a PhD, but still, how research institution can play, because in national education policy, there are four kinds of institution. Meru, multidisciplinary education research universities, all IITs, and all the best institution in research, they are all part of that first category. Comprehensive teaching universities, few central universities and all state universities where larger undergraduate education, they are part of the second category, comprehensive teaching university. Of course, they also do research, but comparing to first category, less research. And the third category is degree granting college, in ISER and even triple ITs, even IIMs. Probably either they may go to Meru depending upon the research, or maybe a degree granting college. And the fourth one is a comprehensive universities or deemed university, deemed university, distinct deemed university, or cluster university. Four categories government has devised, and recently all of you know that Higher Education Commission of India has approved at Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. It has gone to JPC maybe in 6 months or so. A very different kind of transformation is going to happen in education. Is keeping this in mind. Now floor is open to ask questions. We are lucky to have four distinguished speakers with us. You can point out the question with the speaker, and speaker will respond. We take few questions. You can raise the hand and mic will be taken there. And you can ask the pointed question so that we can take many questions. Otherwise, you should not give, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, the question asking happens, 10, 15 minutes, it should not happen. Pointed questions, and I am there. All the distinguished members will respond to your questions, whatever you think, and it should come out from your mind so that it will be the larger benefit of all the participants. Raise the hand and mic is there. Yeah, Professor Gubbi.
Thank you, panel, for a very engaging discussion. My question is, so one of the observation or suggestion that was made was AI should take over the boring and the mundane part of, research. Uh, I was thinking about it and I was wondering if that activity is taken over by something. So can true meaningful research come out of non-boring kind of work? Because sometimes you have to go through a lot of
You are
pain.
posing question to whom?
It's open to the panel. Anybody?
No,
could take it.
you can point out and you can ask the question.
Varun?
Varun ji, okay. Yeah, please.
Thank you. Sometimes, see, I'm in many ways more like a PhD student than a dean. So, given I was coming on this panel, I basically started yesterday going through all the 2025 issues and Journal of Marketing and organizational research methods to look at research on AI in research, right? And so, given I put in all the work, I think I have to share some of the stuff with you. So the question is, where in the research process does AI add value, right? Is kind of what you're asking. And so there were some wonderful examples. So I'll be using ORM. There was a case of where it could be used in qualitative research as an example. What's boring, what's not. So this particular case is about entrepreneurs' attitude towards impression management. Is there a difference between how men and women project impression management in their green entrepreneurship activities? And they essentially looked at where you could use AI for this and at what point would it break down. So this particular study essentially had about 5,000 plus online posts that these 18 entrepreneurs had done. 5,000 is too many for a qualitative research, in order to pull out themes and code and so forth. So they used sort of 3 steps of AI, and essentially in order to get the corpus down from 5,000 to about 200 or so. And it's LLM-based sentiment analysis, LLM-based topic modeling, and LLM-based information retrieval. So they were looking at cosine similarities to figure out, which sentences make sense. So that's a pretty decent and legitimate use of AI in order to the boring, mundane stuff to go from 5,000 articles down to about 200. But then it was time for inductive coding. So now you can decide, do you want to use AI for that? Is that boring or is that the creative part? So now the question is, are you doing grounded theory or you're not doing grounded theory, right? So there's another paper in JMIMS that says if you're doing grounded theory, they actually compared humans doing grounded theory versus machines doing grounded theory. And grounded theory assumes you don't know anything. There they found very similar results. But the moment it's not grounded theory, where the researcher is applying their own intuition, their own frameworks that may not be articulated, it's better to obviously use the human in there to do that final piece. So this was sort of, I think, an example of sort of where you have to, as a researcher, draw the line as where AI is supporting you as it's doing the mundane, boring stuff versus it's letting you focus on what's important. Another example of a boring, mundane stuff is that of personas. For those of you that do marketing research, we know it's very, very difficult to get respondents. AI allows you to create agents that can act as respondents. Now, at what point does a respondent actually respond the way a real person would? And that was what this JOM paper was doing. And they determined that there were ways in which the personas collectively, not as individuals, were pretty close to what the human set were saying, all right? But again, this is based on a current foundational model. Nobody knows how foundational models actually work. They are a black box. And the next version of the foundational model, you probably can't replicate the results of this researcher who says that personas that are AI-based give you equivalent results to that of a human being. The moment the foundational model changes, that study itself that is encouraging you to use AI-based personas needs to be rerun in order to actually make sure that the personas generated by AI are equivalent to the other personas. So because the foundational models of LLM are just so probabilistic in nature. So I think for that reason, not only is it a mundane part, but I think it's also a judgment call as to whether you buy it and whether the reviewer will buy it. Put the relevance thing aside. If you do want to get published, you want the reviewers to basically, accept it. I'm not sure this methodology would get necessarily accepted by every reviewer, in terms of saying I'm using AI-based personas. So I think there's both parts, the boring part and the non-boring part. But then I also think there's the acceptable the widely held conventions versus not. Okay. So I had to share the fact that I spent 8 hours studying for this, so I wanted to share it back with you.
So thank you, Varunji. I think the question comes whether we should have AI policy for research. That is another question one can think about. But nevertheless, any other questions? Yeah, please. Introduce yourself and quickly ask questions. And
Good afternoon. I'm Jayendran from IIT Bombay. So this question comes as a teacher right now. So I think I'll direct to Professor Ravichandran. And of course, anybody in the panel can also respond. Is see, when we are training new researchers, like we didn't go through using AI to do the research. So our views are very different, right? So but when new people are coming in, how do we train them? Like, because there are really good AI tools, like, to help doing data analysis, doing this literature review as told. So do our research methodology also needs to change? How are we going to teach them to responsibly use many of these tools? Instead of looking at AI as a single big thing, we break it down into tool for literature review, tool for data analysis, tool for proofreading, etc. So, are we, do we need to innovate or improve the research methodology course itself, so we can train students to better and properly use the AI tools?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question. I will suggest the following. The advisor-student relationship is more like a guru-sishya relationship. I have been a beneficiary of this. I might not have realized my full potential in spite of the best efforts of my teachers. The first research paper that I wrote was completely rewritten by my advisor. In my presence, it was very humiliating. I was feeling very insulted, but he completely rewrote that paper in my presence. And I think that helped me in a very big way as I went along in terms of writing. I'm still not claiming that I write well, but he did his best. But if he is not doing that best, I think I would have been rotty. This is point number one. Point number two, way back in 1982, my first consulting report was in the context of CMC Vellore with a very well-known, renowned professor from IIM Ahmedabad called Professor Amarlal Kalro. Again, the same story happened. I wrote the draft. He completely rewrote the whole damn thing. Again, feeling so terrible and miserable. But that's a process of learning. Now, therefore, there is no substitute to this. When you go to BK Iyengar's Yoga Institute, he uses props to hang you up and down. And then, then he teaches you how to keep the postures right. And if you don't do that, you're doing more harm to yourself rather than doing good to yourself. Now, this part cannot be replaced by AI. But which part can be replaced by AI? As you know very well, you are probably using AI much more than I do. A lot of this, so I would not say boring work. Boring work is probably a good way of saying it. A lot of this repetitive work, for example, if I had to get to know a whole range of papers that are available, literature survey, for example. Maybe AI can be used to do 80% of the work, and then we use a little bit of creativity to polish that a little bit more. This, I think, is probably the place where we can blend AI with our training process. But in a discipline of our kind, where you and I work more on operations management, more on operations research, the possibility of using AI is, in my opinion, somewhat limited. We can certainly use AI to polish the paper in terms of grammar, in terms of presentation, in terms of style, but that is very different from learning how to write a good flowing paper and how to write good grammar and how to write good sequencing. I think these are completely different. That you can learn only by when you go through the pain, because it's a skill to write papers, it is a skill to conceive papers, and AI cannot possibly help you on that beyond a point.
Thank you very much, sir. I think very nicely presented. And any other questions? Next. Yeah. Akshay.
My question is to Professor Ravichandran. I have a slightly contrarian viewpoint, so I would like to express mine and then get your opinion on it. So way back in 1940s or 50s, maybe, we probably didn't even have calculators to work, and people would use their hands to do all the calculations. And then technology took a leap forward, and we started using calculators, and research still continued. Then technology took another leap forward. Now we had softwares doing all the statistical analysis for us, but research still continued. And let's say with those subsequent leaps, we have come to a point where we have large language models working for us right now. In this context, if I were to argue that using a software tool to perform statistical analysis is acceptable for researchers, why is it unacceptable for researchers to use large language models to write their drafts?
Okay. It's a good question. The answer is very clear. When I use a statistical package, I know the outcome and I know the assumptions involved. And I also have some kind of a process reliability, which tells me how this input data is processed to generate their output. And I can also tease the software, and I give some outputs that are crazy, and I know the inputs are crazy, and I expect the output to be crazy. And if the software conforms to that, I think I'm okay with that. So I have a reliability. It only does speeding up of the job rather than scaling up the job, speeding up the job, rather than substituting my thinking. Now, here, I'm not sure when you use the large language models, whether it is substituting my thinking or it is speeding up. So long as it speeds up, I will go with that. When it does not speed up, I will probably use it in a restricted way. Having said that, just to sort of add a little bit more to clarity to what I'm saying, I'm only making an attempt. I'm not sure whether I add clarity, but the good doctors will always say, the patient tells it all. And that's why in the age-old MBBS system, writing the summary of the patient's symptoms is considered to be a very essential part of diagnosis. Today, you don't have the general physician. Nobody listens to the patient. And all that you do is very sophisticated test. And you do a test for 4,000 rupees. The physician spends only less than half a minute in trying to look at it. And he draws his own conclusion as they go along. Which one is better? I leave the judgment to you. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great example. So last two questions. Now we are running out of time. Any questions? Any research scholar would like to ask?
My question would be to Varun sir. Is it like cost also involved? Because AI models, what you said, would be accessible to some, may not be accessible to many. Now, if that is the case, probably the quality of work which you get as an output from someone who has money and he can pay for the AI tools and all, can have a better output than someone who doesn't have the access or probably is doing on his own. So what is your views on that?
You're right that there are costs involved. And for a study to be replicable, you can't generally use the free models, right? Most of the free models that are available are sort of a user interface based set of models, which are not quite submittable, in a paper. You have to use API based calls, and tokens cost money if you're planning to use any kind of AI whose results you're planning to use in your research study. And it's just a fact of life at this point. So I think it does, if you're going to use AI in your research, other than saying, I used it for literature review to collect, let's say to identify papers and so forth. But if you're going to use it for anything more substantive, like in your study design, your study data analysis and so forth, you're going to have to provide sort of the API calls that you are making to the backend infrastructure. And you're 100% right. That's essentially how these AI companies make money. The other part also would be, having an enterprise license, because that generally protects you from a data confidentiality part of view versus using the public information. So your institution should basically look at providing you at least an enterprise license, if not a proprietary, Llama-based environment and so forth. But you're right about that. It's not very democratic.
So thank you very much, Varunji, and I thank all the distinguished panel members for giving their perspective for these 2, 3 important points raised. And I'm sure, so this is a food for thought, all of us, whether for research, whether each institution should have a AI policy, and also how you prompt AI, your output will be depending upon that. That is also important. If you ask wrong questions, you will get wrong answers. Asking right questions, as Professor Ravichandran ji said, I think that is also important. I think the discussion, whatever the points we have raised, probably you can think on it and discuss. Probably it will help us how to take the research forward, and at the same time how to build a strong bond between theory and practice. And also I think the message, I think everywhere, most of the head of the institution, when we talk, they say, he's a great researcher but poor teacher. That also we should question whether research is being used for teaching, or research is a different vertical, teaching is a different vertical, and training, consultancy, all input should go to the classroom. Then only that is a holistic business school. Whatever the research knowledge created through research, consulting, and also training, we learn a lot from participant. Consulting, we learn a lot. All should go to the classroom. Then only that is a holistic business school, and students gain a lot out of that. And that is how every teacher has to get into at least 2, 3 area apart from teaching, either research or consulting, or research or training, or and 2, 3 areas at least. And only teaching, I think it is no more required. So one has to get into teaching plus, and that is the only going forward. And technology, we should be the first one to capture. We should never be the last one to capture in this world. Technology with tradition, technology with ethical practices, I think that is the only way going long forward. And today, I think India being now a highlight or center point of the globe. So from India to the world, really, we want to take best of the best. I think research is one of the important component, and lot of promotion for research is happening. And I think you all should see that how to take it and how to take the benefit for yourself and your institution. I wish you all the best, and I thank once again yeah.
Because I think, you are all clapping as you should stop. But you made a very provocative statement, like, teaching alone is not sufficient. I personally believe, I can disagree with you. I hope you don't mind. And to me, teaching is the cash cow. And if the cash cow is used to milk, if you milk the cow and feed the dogs and not the baby, then there is a serious problem. Okay, all right. Therefore, I would say without teaching, a faculty member has no business to be in a business school. And you must excel first here and then extend on all your. You may be an outstanding researcher, which is fine. But at the end of the day, my PGP is paying for your international conferences. So you jolly well deliver here.
So that is why I said teaching plus.
Sure.
It is a best. No, earlier also I said the same thing. Teaching plus. It is not minus. So I think I thank once again all the distinguished speakers, panel members for this deliberations, discussions, and lot of insights we got. With this, now our compares to go ahead.
Thank you, sir, for moderating the session. And thank you to all our esteemed panelists for a truly enriching and thought-provoking discussion on the future of research and publication in the era of AI. Your insights on academic integrity, human accountability, industry relevance, and the responsible use of AI have added immense value to this session. We sincerely thank you, Professor Tiwari, for joining us online, and look forward to the opportunity of welcoming him to our campus in the future. Thank you, sir. Can you please have a round of applause? And now, as a token of our gratitude, may we request Professor Bhim Rai Maitri to kindly present a memento to Professor N. Ravichandran. Thank you, sir.
Sir.
May we also request Professor Bhimrai Maitri to kindly present a memento to Professor T.R. Parsuraman. Thank you, sir. May we also request Professor Maitri to kindly present a memento to Dr. Varun Nagaraj. Thank you, sir.
In line with our conference theme of agility, analytics, and sustainability, we present tree plantation certificates as a token of our gratitude. Trees have been planted on behalf of our esteemed panelists at the Trees for Tigers initiative in Simlipal National Park, Odisha. And the certificates with the tracking IDs will be emailed to our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you once again to our distinguished panelists and to the audience for being a part of this session. We hope today's session contributes meaningfully to our academic and research journey. Thank you all.
I request all the panelists to be on the dais for a group photograph. Yes, sir.
You are a tall person. Around